Thank you, Kathy. We do appreciate you. Thank you for taking the time to talk to us and address us and share with us your thoughts. Our next guest has been called one of the best community college marketers and strategists in America today. Dr. Pam Cox Otto brings a research-based approach to every project. As anyone who has ever worked with her or seen her present can attest, she brings to bear remarkable powers of observation, along with a fairly wild sense of humor. She has created statewide image and recruitment programs for community colleges, implemented government relations efforts, passed college bonds and referendums, and recreated the brands of many colleges coast to coast. A former television news reporter, she has written books on best web practices for colleges and college branding, and is a frequent national keynote speaker. She blends the latest research and marketing skills with a deep understanding of two-year colleges. A graduate of Humboldt State University for her BA, California State University, Long Beach for her MA, and the University of Minnesota for her doctorate of philosophy, she has worked in and with community colleges for more than 40 years. Ladies and gentlemen, please lean in and help me welcome Dr. Pam Cox Otto.
Hi, everyone. I hope you can hear me. And like most of you, I'm coming to you live from my kitchen, which is why the background is blurred. I don't want you to see everything behind me. That's my thing. I'm going to start my PowerPoint in a minute because, you know, everybody has a PowerPoint, but I want to tell you why I love you guys. And I will warn you, this is why I can never run for president, because I'll get probably a little teary. I was raised in India, in Sri Lanka, a little island at the tip of India. So I grew up, my family was attached to the State Department. And my family, we were always entertaining ambassadors, all of those things. And it wasn't until that we returned to the US and I was going to high school in California that I discovered my mother had never finished high school. She dropped out at like 9th grade. I told you, this is why I can't run for office. I would tear up and they'd go unstable and then it would be all over. So what ended up happening was my mom went back to get her GED, and she went back to get her GED from the local community college. In this case, it was College of the Redwoods in Northern California. She finished her GED and graduated literally the year before I finished my high school degree. And then she stayed at the community college, crammed 2 years into 1 year, and graduated with an AA degree. And then she transferred to Humboldt, where she was now a junior and I was a freshman, which, let's just say, I didn't have nearly as much fun as I could have because my mother was on campus. Let's just put it that way. But bottom line is, by the time she passed away, she had a master's degree, and none of that would have been happening but for all of the work that you do. So when I talk about this, I'm not talking about this as a vendor or somebody trying to sell you caca. Yes, I am bilingual. I'm talking to you because I know what you do, and I know the difference you make in people's lives. And I'm honored to be talking with you today because I know you make a difference. So with that, I actually do have a PowerPoint, and I will now bring it up because I can't help myself. It's a sad thing. So I'm about to share my screen. And here we go. And I'm bringing up a PowerPoint. Hopefully you can see it. And it's non-credit leads the way. I'm hoping that's visible for all of you.
Yes.
And by the way, you know, I'm going to try it on occasion to go up and look at the comments, but we're going to leave time to talk at the end. So questions, comments, animal noises, anything you want to talk about, please, you know, save it and we'll talk about it when we get to the end. So let's, you know, a little bit about me and mine, other than the fact that, you know, that, but for you, my mother would not have been able to do the things she did. Basically, I've been doing this kind of thing for, at this point, nearly 37 years. We work face-to-face with community colleges, and only community colleges, because I love what what they do. You make a difference. And talking about people who directly impact everything from social mobility, economic mobility, and equity issues, it's all to your schools. In my misspent youth, yes, I was a reporter. Don't hold that against me. I was young and innocent and all of those things. So in the meantime, I started a company, Interact, and this is actually, I should change that number. This is our 25th anniversary. We've been around serving two-year schools for 25 years. We're currently working with Blackhawk in your area. I've done work with Kankakee. Well, there's a long list of folks that we've worked with in Illinois, but more importantly right now, we're working with nearly 500 community colleges across the country, both credit and non-credit, as they're doing yeoman's work, trying to help people, communities during these tough times. And because we never wanted to be, just somebody who says, you should buy some ads. That'll be great there. We have full marketing, research, strategy, and creative, and that's kind of our background. With that out of the way, everybody's been talking about unprecedented. Oh yeah. Who saw this coming? Apparently every epidemiologist who ever lived and walked on this earth, who saw that it would impact our entire way of delivering education. A year ago, nobody. In March, everybody. By that time, it was clear that we were going into a whole new, before, after. It was going to change everything. We're a year in, we're not out of this. We're not out of this. Every college I talk to, I'm saying to them, people who are taken this close to the edge, and people are close to the edge, are not going to bounce right back and say, oh, I guess things are opening up again. Let me risk it all and come back to school, whether it's credit, non-credit, ESL, it doesn't matter, adult basic education. When people are frightened, it's very difficult to make some of those choices, right? So we're still in the middle of the toughest times we've ever seen in the country, and we're not out of it yet. And we also have, there's most of the epidemiologists are saying we're facing a fourth wave. Nobody wants to hear that, but as deGrasse Tyson, one of the preeminent physicists in America, said, when you have areas opening up with masks, it's a little bit like setting a part of the pool where everyone can pee. It's going to go everywhere. So we need to stay vigilant because we're not out of this by any means. Enrollment impact. And now I'm going to talk about what that means kind of for you. These are your numbers. Most colleges down significantly. Most of the schools that I work with, we work with Los Angeles Community College District is one of the larger ones. And it serves a unique population where 50% of the population are African-American and Latinx. And when you look at populations that are diverse, they've been much more hard hit by this than anyone else, really. They've taken a bigger hit in both employment and jobs, and the pandemic hit them disproportionately. We serve people who've been disproportionately affected by all of this. In Oregon, this last year, they've had a 48% decline in adult basic ed. Iowa's 23, Indiana's 42, Wisconsin's 30. So what this is telling us is we know we've got a huge need out there, but when people are spending all of their time figuring out how to put food on the table, they don't go, well, let me immediately rush back to school. You're on the front line. We know that you're delivering education, but more importantly, you're delivering hope, because 1/3 of the population in America right now is suffering from depression. The number of people who are showing incredible signs of stress is going up daily. You're keeping all of us moving forward, and particularly the most hard hit people in our communities. You're preparing people for what comes next. You're looking ahead to the jobs, what those changes are going to be. And one of the pieces that I just recently read was literally 1/3 of all of the restaurants and bars that have ever been in existence that we've all had, they're not coming back. So all of those jobs for servers and waiters and hospitality, and even the tourism industry, are going to be so much more hard hit than even now, because those jobs simply aren't going to come back. And we're dealing with two of the biggest issues of our time at this moment. And it's a worldwide pandemic, but the piece that I just have to say is we're dealing with unresolved equity issues in our own country. And that was never more so apparent to all of us than last summer in Minneapolis. and seeing how the world treats different parts of our citizenry differently. And I'm not sure all of us didn't know that at some level, but I'm not sure that we understood it at that core level. So those are two of the big pieces. Yes, it's unprecedented times. Yes, none of us have lived through a pandemic till this point, but I don't think we realized how deeply rooted a lot of the inequity in our country is. So we're dealing with both of those. And as I mentioned, pandemic hit communities of color much harder. And all of that is rippled through both credit and non-credit. And I'm absolutely serious when I say you lead the way, because you are at the very front of the funnel. And the people that you are able to bring in with ESL and basic education, all of those things, you are lifting people higher in your community than my favorite story, I was invited to into Michigan to talk to the Wayne State University faculty who were very upset with the quality of community college students that were being sent to them. And they wanted me to talk to them about how they could explain to the community college people that, boy, you really need to kick it up a notch, because some of your students are just not what we want. We want them to be a little better prepared. And I said, who's the better teacher? Somebody who brings somebody from a 5th or 6th grade or no English reading level to someone who can actually be ready for college, or somebody who takes a B student out of high school with no problems and prepares them for a university? And the answer is you do. It's you. You are bringing people much further in their lives than most of the universities in this country. And I say that in all love. I love universities, but you do more. So, the respect should be there. And unfortunately, like so many things, the people who actually do the heavy lifting don't get nearly the respect for it. These are a few things I worry about, and we've all talked about it, but this is from the Center of Budget and Policy Priorities. And one of the things is 1 in 6 adult households with children lack sufficient food in the last 7 days. 4 in 10 children that are in renter households face food or housing hardship. Our communities are in trouble. Our families are in trouble. Our students, your students, are the second hardest hit in the pandemic. And when you serve communities of color, you're the first hardest hit. The students we serve, for the most part, are low-income job holders who've either been laid off or their jobs have disappeared, and their children are paying the price. It's the reason why, whatever your political affiliation, all of the surveys are indicating that people are glad that there's help coming, particularly to help lift children out of poverty. Your communities, when you look at how it's hitting, these are your Illinois numbers, right? When you look at adults reporting that the household didn't have enough to eat. The national average is 11% of adults. In Illinois, it's 860,000. That number is probably higher because these numbers were collected through February 15th. I mean, the good news, it's fairly fresh. But when you also look at the households that say children in the household aren't getting enough to eat, you see that the percent of adults living with children, that number is 24%. So families, poor families, they're being harder hit. And those are the people that, when we talk about adult basic education and people who are underemployed and not able to change their stars and move up and move on easily, that's who you serve. And we've got lots of people in that group. As I always tell people, it turns out that when you can't put food on the table, gas in the car, or you're facing eviction, you probably aren't thinking about school, right? And even when education is free, as in many cases, adult basic ed and other kinds of courses, ESL, they're spending their time focusing on the basic physiological issues. It's cognitive load, gang. I mean, how many of you have thought to yourself at one point in the day, oh Lord, please, no more Zoom meetings. I can't cope. Well, that kind of cognitive load, where we're all literally staring and looking at, everything has gotten harder. It's not just walk down and talk to a friend or be at a meeting and you come up with a solution. The connection issues, the being on camera all the time, all of those pieces, that adds cognitive load. And if you're not sure what you have to eat today or tomorrow, or you're worried about your kid's safety, or all of those things, that is a load on your mind. And those of you who are younger and have kids at home, you know what I'm talking about. The cognitive load to deal with all of the things we have to deal with is huge, which is why so many people are not running out to come back to school, even when they know it's important, even when they know it can give them choices. They're not doing it because one more thing, I can't do freaking one more thing. So here we are. Nearly 12% of your population doesn't have a high school diploma. That, you know, it's 11.7%. You've got large numbers of people who need you. When you look at the dropout rate, you can see that this is a huge equity issue, because when you look at the dropout rate, Hispanic, African-American are disproportionately impacted, and are as being part of folks who don't complete high school. And when you look at the ESL population, you know, in Illinois, one of the biggest language variation is Spanish, followed by Polish, followed by Chinese. And on the right, it's a great chart. And this is your Illinois numbers. You're looking at, you know, people who speak languages less well. You can see that Chinese, Korean, Russian, Polish. I know most of the country, when I'm working in California, it's always Spanish, unless I'm in the Bay Area, and then it's always some variation of Chinese. But when you look at this list, you realize we have so many other languages where people cannot access the full panoply of things that we offer, simply because they don't speak the language. So you've got two big lifts here, and these are the folks who are being most heavily impacted by the loss of jobs and the pandemic itself. So we've got issues, gang. So here we are, no diploma or English, and this traps nearly 1 million of your folks in jobs where they make $17,000 to $26,000 a year if they have jobs. So you're looking at the most recent numbers that I can find for the U.S. and Illinois by male, female, and looking at median income. So we all know you can't live on that amount of money unless you're living with a lot of people in a small house or apartment. So folks are heavily hit. So believe me when I tell you, I know you're on the front line. You're a part of creating equity. You're also the critical funnel that fills your college's credit seats with working adults. That's probably one of the most critical pieces that are impacting community colleges, because when your enrollment begins to shrink, so does theirs, because you are absolutely the leading funnel for enrollment. That's where people who never thought of college catch the dream. And by this time, I don't know how it is where you are, but we work with colleges in New York. They're already talking 50% cutback in funding levels at the state level. And when you're talking that large amount of a cut, I have colleges in upstate New York and the rural area of New York who are literally meeting and deciding who gets to keep what programs, because they can't afford to have 3 nursing programs within a 50-mile radius. So we are making tough choices, and we're doing fishes and loaves. We're doing more with less all the time, and the need is not smaller. In fact, if anything, it's greater. So you lead the way, and I'm going to talk marketing. And I should warn you right now, I'm a pragmatist. Yeah, I do marketing. Yeah, you know, all of the big picture marketing stuff. Yeah, do all of that. But here's my one thing I will tell you honestly. If you're lucky enough to work with marketing team, or if you have a small budget where you do marketing locally, some kind of advertising, here's my tricky piece that I always tell everybody: never work with somebody who only wants to tell you how to buy ads. And the reason is because of who you hit and who you are reaching out to. Advertising is not always the best way, and it's certainly not the most trusted way. So if every solution is you should spend money on buying stuff, they're not thinking hard enough for you. You need, and most of you are literally carrying the water for your own marketing issues. So that's my leadoff piece, but now let's talk marketing, if you're okay with that. Okay, I always talk messaging because, and the reason why is that you could be doing great stuff, putting messages into hands of people. And if it's not the right message at the right level, then it's not going to reach, right? And so often, particularly College marketing tends to aim toward self-actualization. You're having a degree, your dreams will come true. You'll be respected in your career, all of those pieces. Yeah, that's good. I mean, I'm not saying don't do those, but please look at this piece and realize that if you are worried about food and shelter and sleep and clothing, telling me that everybody will like me doesn't do squat for me, doesn't do anything. So the message you use to bring people in has to connect with the level. And Maslow is not all bad. It's simplistic, but it really gives you a way to think about what the issues are. So you have to connect with the level they're on. And for the most part, diploma messaging, people without a diploma, they're trapped at the physiological need area, right? They're worried about the house and the food and the car and gas and all those things. So your messaging is about providing for your family, for your friends, for your community, about having choices, not being the one that always gets dumped when somebody gets laid off, being able to take care of your family, having your children start with more, and freedom from being afraid. I mean, the whole, remember the old, freedom from want, all of the Norman Rockwell kind of freedoms. Well, those are out of date in one sense, but that freedom from fear, from having it always weighed on your mind that you're just this close away from losing it all, that's a huge piece. That's a huge piece. So the messaging that you're doing at both the ESL and the diploma level, it doesn't mean you can't talk about a bigger dream, but you have to connect with them with this kind of core dream. So I'm going to give you an example of what I'm talking about. You can't cure the pandemic, but you can end it with more choices than you had when you started, right? The idea that you're not trapped. There's a lot of frontline workers who continued to work. They didn't lose their job. They're doing well. But the truth is, every single day that they worked, they were terrified that not only would they get the virus, but they'd pass it to someone they love, right? So that idea that you emerge not just with money, but with choices where you can pick to work to stay home, or you're not just the person who gets dumped. Because you're not a disposable worker, right? That idea that we talk about frontline workers with frontline workers, how brave they are. And then we treat them like, I'm going to go bilingual again, caca. We treat them badly. And that idea, they understand they're being used and stand in place of others who don't want to risk it all, right? So that idea that you aren't disposable, that you have choices, and we are going to put you on a path to give you those choices for yourself and your family. You didn't finish because you had responsibilities. Come back for exactly the same reason. That's a piece that works very well, particularly with young families who dropped out because of pregnancy or young marriage, or simply to take care of their family. So the idea is to build on the fact you did the right thing before, you can do the right thing now. And it's the same motivation. Those are just examples, gang. I mean, I'm just giving you some ideas, but I want you to always think about where you're building those messages around. And if there's questions, gang, please write them down. I'll happily take them at the end. ESL messaging, without a diploma or English skills, people are also trapped at the physiological need, also safety. All of the numbers that we're seeing more and more about how the Asian community is now being picked out, and safety among the Asian community is an issue. But honestly, safety among the African-American, the Latinx communities, among any diverse community has always been an issue. So that physiological and safety piece is always there. But you also add that so many, particularly that you serve 300,000 immigrants who've come into Illinois, right? For them, they typically will gravitate toward their own family members and their own community. And you've got lots of small neighborhoods that are clusters of communities of immigrants, or language, certain groups that are speaking a particular language. All of that gathering means that the love and belonging, that neighborhood piece, also plays well. So in some ways you might look and think, well, I have they're too at the physiological area. Well, they are, but also because they are particularly vulnerable even to people in positions of responsibility. Safety comes in, as does love and belonging. So some of the messaging, I'm just going to give you the love and belonging. You're a stronger part of your family and your community. You're laying the foundation for what comes next. You know what to do in order to care for others in your family and your community. There's nothing you wouldn't do for them, right? Including learn the language and come back to school. And the idea of passing it on, I work all the time with, we do work in San Francisco, and they too have a very, very large, in their case, usually Korean and Asian population. But that idea that the whole family works to get one person through school, and then that person works to help lift the person behind them, that is a really common kind of message in most immigrant communities and diverse communities. So that idea you're passing it on and making your entire community stronger, that resonates, gang. So examples, how about this? It all starts with understanding. And in this case, I'm letting English also stand in for the understanding. And I'm not simply saying you must learn to understand, but we also need to understand. And to do that, we have to be able to communicate, right? So simple message, little, fun. You're leading the way for your family, your community, your neighborhood, because English opens doors. And that's true now as it was true 200 years ago. That's one of the pieces. It's a strength in some ways and less. I have good friends in Italy, and I go there, and most of the people in other countries speak at least 2 and sometimes 3 or more languages. We don't. That's a weakness. It's also a strength about bringing people together and trying to kind of create a more homogeneous population. So here's my big thing about messaging, okay? Always lead with emotion, always. You will make X more dollars. That is interesting and it's a fact, but that does not convince me to give up time with my family or risk my job or other things. Always lead with emotion. Appeal to their need not to be trapped at that basic level. If any of you have ever been poor, I worked my way through college, my first bachelor's, my master's, and I worked my way through while doing the first one was all the basic minimum wage jobs, stocking and all of those things. And that idea that you're always have a checkbook in your head where you're measuring, can I afford this, right? And can we go out to eat? Can I buy the new shoes? Those things are such a load on the mind. So the idea of not having to live in fear of want is a big communicator. So not wanting to always be afraid and be trapped at that basic level, that's a motivator. There's 2 pieces. Among English speakers, there's the magic of the word because. You don't even have to, you noticed a couple of my earlier languages, I said, because they depend on you. Because is one of those words that I don't even have to explain. Because what? What do you mean? What? The word because brings up an earlier piece where I mentally fill in whatever my because is, because you want more for your children, right? The ending piece is, and the leading part of it is, you'll come back to school, you'll learn English, you'll go to college, you'll get a trade, you'll earn a career, you'll go on to your bachelor's because of the next piece, right? So you're able to actually start with the second part. For non-English speakers, there's the magic of the word more. There's a lot of English things that don't really translate because some languages, yes, some languages, no. But more, mas, almost everybody gets the word mas, Italian, puis, that idea that you could have mas, more. They're almost all of us want just a little more, a little more time, a little more money, a little more whatever, right? So those are messaging that when you're doing things, that idea, even when you're doing ESL recruiting and all of those pieces, more translates, and it almost translates every time. So now we talk strategy, right? And I can't help myself. This is I know most of you know your community, so I'm not trying to, in some ways, I know you're more sophisticated on much of this, but I also want to take you through my thinking process, because one of my lessons in college is I learned I could write any paper overnight as long as I had a good outline. And the whole trick was to break it out into all of the pieces and create parity, right? So one of the things is when you've been doing a successful program, you have your favorite things that you do every time, and then you hit something like a pandemic and things don't work like they did, right? So these are the thought processes that I go through when I'm trying to do more and help with marketing, right? Where are they in both the real world and virtual? Because particularly among English as a second language, people tend to gather in certain areas, whether it's regionally or neighborhood or around a civic group, etc. Who are they with, right? Family, work, neighborhood. Where are they? Who's associated with them? Who do they trust? Boss, neighbor, local store. And then of course I threw in the Mr. Rogers thing. Who are the helpers? Always look for the helpers. Who are the helpers in their lives who are stepping in? It could be church, it could be a social worker, it could be a teacher. And to what do they attend? And when I say attend, I'm using it in the persuasive sense of I pay attention to, right? I attend to it. So it could be language focused newspapers, radio, web, local hangout. So I know you probably are already thinking about, one, maybe all of these groups, but these are the larger set of things that I'm always thinking about when we're worrying about how to go after them, right? If you are really active in your community and you are trusted, then you can carry the message, right? You can be the one out there saying, we can help you. We can do more to support you, right? But if you aren't, then you put it into the hands, place, media, people they do trust, right? In other words, your trick is not for you to always be the one to hand deliver the message, but instead plant the seed in other places, nurture the seeds out there, but let them carry the message. Because if you're not the trusted person, you're the wrong person to deliver the message, even if it's a shorter route. And that, by the way, that's the stuff that takes both time and patience, because we want to help people. So it's like, I'll go to their meeting, I'll tell them that I'm here to help them. Sometimes, I say this all the time to college recruiters, right? At 25, right out of your bachelor's degree, you may have been a great high school recruiter, but now at 60, it's like grandma's coming to visit the high school. They don't want to see you. You're not cool, right? So when you're looking at audiences, you have to figure who's the cool person that can go in. And sometimes it's you. For me, if it's a senior center, yeah, they can relate, but if it's not, I may not be the right person. So always be asking, are you the right person to carry that message? This is just a little chart that I do, and it's like, your target audience. And in this case, I was just brainstorming, your target audience. Imagine Spanish speaking only with no diploma, and you've got, who are the helpers? And those are everything from legal aid and social work and church. Who are they with? And that's, priest and boss and neighborhood and extended family. And where do they attend? And it's everything from, bus stops and neighborhoods and local language media and grocery stores and classifieds. And where are they? Zip codes, work sites. And then finally, who do they trust? We did one of the pieces that I'm particularly proud of is we're always thinking of, first, what are the collaterals we need to put in their hands, but what's the distribution channel? And all of these things really are about distribution, how to get the message to them in a way that's not just transactional, where your college is sending out a memo or hitting an event and handing out one thing and then you're gone, right? So I have my examples are, we just did an ad campaign for veterans, right? And in this case, it was veterans, both credit and non-credit. And we were doing a massive campaign, but it wasn't all built around advertising. One of the things that we did was we reached out to tattoo parlors in this broader area. And it's a very common thing. I think the number is something like 80+% of veterans have at least one tattoo. So what we did is we made tattoo parlors one of our delivery sites for messaging. It works and it's trusted, and you're sitting there being tattooed. You have time. So it's, it sounds like a simple thing, but it works. It's a very effective kind of way, at least with that audience. Hmong community. I live in La Crosse, Wisconsin. I'm just, barely across the border from you guys. And we had a large Hmong community. And what we realized was the best place to reach them. At the early days, there were only 2 Hmong restaurants. So what we did was that was the delivery point, and we worked with that restaurant to put all the messaging into their hands. Many of you are doing the same thing. So you're probably going, well, duh. Okay, Pam. But other things like in Texas, Texas is incredibly multicultural, but for all their multiculturalism, you would be surprised how few Latinos are actually working in the 2-year college system down there. So when we were trying to increase the number of folks who were both coming in for education, but also recruitment, we reached out to the Catholic Church because it's trusted. And that's also when we discovered there's a huge Latinx population that are evangelists. So we also we used both of those areas, but churches, trusted, the idea that you're motivating people to be your best self. So those are just examples. And I know many of you are doing similar things, but there may be things in that list. If you go through the list, you may find some things that you've missed, opportunities that'll be working better. This is kind of a strategy piece, but it's always relevant, right? Always be recruiting for the next step. And I tell you this, I know many of you are, right? I absolutely know many of you are because I worked with many of you. But I also know for every one of you who are doing this, there's a lot of folks who don't think it through. For example, in the middle of the ESL, from the minute someone comes in your ESL program, right? Whatever it is, whether it's basic ESL or advanced or ESL for particular jobs or careers, right? From the moment they enter that, you should be talking to them about the next step. In some cases, that's the diploma, right? The adult basic ed. In some cases, they can go directly to a workforce certificate. In others, at the end of ESL, they're either ready for an associate degree or, knowing that you've got lots of immigrants who come here, don't speak the language, you may have people who have degrees, advanced degrees, and who can simply go into a program at the university level once they have English under their belt. But the idea is the minute they hit your program, you should be recruiting them for the next step in the process. Never let a class go by where you're not reminding them that they're good enough, they're smart enough, they've got options, and that there are more things they can do to move themselves forward. I work with colleges all the time, and this is one of the first things I look at, and you would be appalled at the number of times they don't talk about diploma or a certificate or a degree until literally they're about to leave, right? It's like the last day of class, or they're at the ceremony and the president's speaking and saying, and I hope you'll all continue with us, right? I mean, that should be woven into the entire experience because you're building grit and resiliency as you're teaching them all of these skills. So that piece, that idea that you're ready for what comes next, and here are the things that can come next for you, that should be built in. So from ESL to diploma to certificate to degree, and same's true of dual credit or CCP or other things that are seen as standalone. They should always be recruiting for the next phase. I bet, it's a crime when we lose them directly to other locations, especially when, frankly, our people are probably better teachers than you'll find at the university, simply because we are focused on teaching as a skill, not research or other areas. That's my bias. I fully admit it. You build resilience and grit, and it starts the dream process. My mother never, ever, ever thought of college, not once, right? She was the first generation in my family to go to college. My sister had gotten her high school degree, but dropped out of school. It was my mother who got her GED and then went on to college and got her degree. And from that moment on, everybody in my family has a degree. Before, after, right? You're building in the resilience and the things that come next. So always be preparing them and getting them ready for the next step. Also, your application should prepare them for your college application. I know some places where they have a very simplified application that's like, 5 things, give us your contact information. And then you try to get them into the college and it looks like War and Peace, part 1. Fill out this simple 38-part questionnaire to apply for credit classes or whatever it is, diploma, anything. So your application should prepare them for the college app. Your teacher should be preparing them for college teaching. Your experiences should be creating the hunger for the college experience. I went back at 50 to get my doctorate because every darn step along the way, people kept saying, you should get your doctorate. You can do it. You should. And when the moment allowed me to do that, I did, because the hunger was there, right? Always be making them hungry to know more. That's part of our gift as teachers. Here's the tough news. I do have a little, kind of bad news in all of this. And the tough news in all of this is, do you have your 2021-2022 marketing plan done for your programs yet? Do you have it done? I fully admit, when I was a marketing director, first in California and then here in Wisconsin for 2-year schools, I fully admit that, I would go like, oh, it's time for fall. And I'd suddenly realize I needed to do fall marketing. And it was usually about, April, May, and then I'd get everything going. And then I got to tell you, I was always surprised about the GED or basic education graduation dinner. It was like, what? We're having that again? It's like, we have it every freaking year. Why is it surprising me that it's coming again in the same month? So one of the things that I realized when I started to work with lots of colleges, not simply my own, was that the schedule is, we're almost always late. And this is just me, right? But here's a piece I'd like you to think about. When, when it is exactly time for, you're getting ready for, and I know you do ongoing enrollment and you're not tied to the semesters the way credit classes typically are, right? But my big thing is, I want you in October, November to be thinking of the next year's marketing plan, right? The fiscal year that's coming next. So back in October of 2020, October and November is when I sit down to write the marketing plans for my colleges for the next year. And the reason is I have plenty of time to make changes. I can create my message. I can share it with leadership and college staff so they can get excited about what I'm saying. I can be sharing in January instead of scrambling to say, what are we going to do this year, right? And then I have all my stuff ready and being launched so that I'm driving both summer enrollment and fall. So it's really done and operating through the whole piece. So the idea here is quite honestly, and you'll see I've got schedules, right? You're planning for the next fiscal year. You get all the materials done in February, long before that next fiscal year starts, because of course, as you all know, you're always recruiting in the previous fiscal year for the next fiscal year's students, right? You're using this year's money to get next year's students. So you have to think ahead of that so that you don't have a break in your marketing, right? So this is just my schedule piece. But if you do that right and get it all done by February, you can simply run it and tweak it. And what that means is if things change like they did this year, where suddenly it's March and you're having to change everything, you're not having to create everything on the fly. You've got a plan and you can modify it according to what's happening, but you're not trying to recreate it in the chaos of dealing with all the stuff. Now, I won't lie, the first year you do this, it's a heavy lift because you're in the middle of doing fall things while I'm saying, don't even think about fall and of course, whatever's going on in your spring programs. I'm saying be thinking about next fall, right? So, but if you do it the first year, from then on, you've absolutely given yourself panic time and crisis time and chaos time, and you've built in the opportunity to be able to change and respond more quickly to crises because your base level is all covered, right? I always throw this in. These are things to avoid. This is just me, but death by ducks, behind the curve in the wrong place, doing the wrong thing. And these are my own personal picadillos, but I've worked with community colleges for a long darn time. And these are the things that I see that beat everybody up the most. So first is death by ducks. And it's being pecked to death by the dull details. Do this, no, change in philosophy, change in focus. Or we're going to focus on this thing this year. and this is particularly true almost every time you have a new president, a new program director, people bring in their new ideas. That's wonderful. But the issue is every time that happens, it's like, you know how we were focusing on moving this needle? No, we're focusing on this needle now, and we're going to change this piece. Well, part of the whole trick here is to pick something that really is a major needle, and then focus. And ask permission from your leaders to focus on this piece. It should be something that truly floats the boat for the entire institution. But once it is something that big, don't just be going, here's the new hot topic this week and the new hot topic that week. I call it being basically pecked to death by lots of little details, and you never get ahead, right? Being behind the curve, never catching up, always playing catch up, rushing ahead without planning, always late to the party. You can see things coming, but you can't change them. I'll give you my biggest issue here. For those of you who are working with adult basic ed and ESL, the idea necessarily of payments and cost of tuition, all of those pieces aren't necessarily things that are always hitting you. But if this presidency, and particularly our basically Mrs. Biden, Dr. Biden, comes up and is able to push forward the idea that all community colleges and everything we do is free. On one hand, what a wonderful boost to access. On another hand, it's going to hit us very hard in both retention, because a lot of times people stay because they've invested money, which means people will drop out because there's nothing keeping them in. I know you've already dealt with that many times in adult basic ed and other things, but we're going to have lots of issues having to do with respect and image, because people tend to not value things that are as free, which means we have to always be focusing on outcomes and show our worth through what they actually get out of that piece, as opposed to talking about ourselves. So part of my thing again is pick early and focus. Pick things now that will last through that change, right? Don't pick something that we're a great value for the money, and then suddenly we're free, and all of that we're a great value for the money language and wording gets tossed away because that's no longer an issue, right? And now you're scrambling to create who you are while everybody else is scrambling to create who you are. That's a tough thing, right? Third thing is wrong place, and also wrong time. And this is my own personal thing. I will tell you that my life got so much better when I stopped working directly at a college and attending every damn freaking meeting. Most times my life is spent, basically 50% or plus are spent in meetings. And 70% of our time is spent in preparation for tasks we don't have time to do because we're always in another damn meeting, right? It takes huge chunks of your time. It means if you're like I was, you're traveling home at night or working from home, and your workday doesn't end because you're trying to get the work done you said you would get done when you spent all damn day in meetings, right? So here's my trick. It's avoid meetings if possible. In other words, I have lots of ideas. If you ever want ideas on this, happily, I'll come, give you some ideas to think through about how to both bring people together, collaborate, create synergy and teamwork, but not have to spend all of your life figuring out when everybody's available for a meeting and then spending your time in a meeting, right? It's wrong. And why do I say avoid it? I'm going to give you this is my favorite piece of trivia, okay? I don't know if you've ever heard of the OSS and Wild Bill Donovan. I have a history minor, right? And one of the things I spent a lot of time reading about was World War II and all of the things that led up to it, because I also, my doctorate's in communication and persuasion. So when you're looking at propaganda and things, obviously World War II is kind of a germinal moment in the study of propaganda, right? Anyway, so Wild Bill Donovan was the head of the OSS, which is basically the precursor for the CIA, right? And in World War II, they wrote the manual of dirty tricks to sabotage the Germans, because There was a long time the war went on before we were able to actually go to invade Europe again, right? So in the meantime, you have a lot of people that are living there under the Nazis, and they're trying to fight, but they need tools, right? And not all tools are guns, right? So they wrote what was considered the dirty trick manual, the simple sabotage field manual put out by the strategic services. And it basically was their dirty trick book. And in 1963, they declassified it. Now you're thinking, why, Pam, are you telling us this? Thank you for the trivia, but why? I'll tell you why. Because their advice was, this is how you sabotage the German plans. This is how you bring an organization, a government to its knees. They said anybody can sabotage. It's easy to sabotage. The best people are middle management because, we kind of get lost in the middle and people don't see us and they don't suspect really, that we have people above us that are grown-ups and have to go to the board meetings, and we have people that we work with who we coordinate. And, we're kind of we're the cheese in the grilled cheese sandwich. We kind of get forgotten in the middle of the toasting, right? So knowing that anybody can sabotage and the best are middle management, here's what they said. This is their effective tip. Whenever possible, refer all matters to committees for, quote, further study and consideration, end quote. Also, attempt to make the committees as large and bureaucratic as possible. Then hold conferences when there's more critical work to be done. And you can grind an organization to its knees. Committees, this is my thing, gang. If you're going to pull people together, and I do believe in teamwork and pulling folks together and collaboration, but the whole idea is, if you don't like the idea, I wrote 5 steps in a plan. I'm working with a college in Wisconsin right now on their process for doing strategic enrollment management, right? I said, and this woman had written this plan 4 months ago, and what's happened to it? Nothing. They meet and everybody picks at it, and they go back and they said, okay, we'll pick at it some more, and they come back with more picky things, right? I said, no. Okay, you don't like my plan? Come back with, you don't like that piece? Excellent. Come back with 3 ways to do it differently next time. You bring your ideas, right? I mean, in other words, no more of this. Let's just form a subcommittee and pick it apart. Bring a solution. Bring a solution every freaking time. Never allow pot shots and to send it into the distance for study and consideration. And the reason why I say that is what you do, the people we do it for, are way too important and too in need of what we have to offer for us to waste our freaking time to get things perfect. Here's the toughest part about being in education. All of us who've worked our way up through bachelor's degrees and master's degrees and doctorates, all of us, right? We are used to always writing papers, right? And in our head, our advisor is always looking at that paper and you're thinking, how can I make it better? How can I do one more thing that'll improve it? It'll make it, this will be the perfect plan. And the answer is it will never freaking be perfect. The answer is to get it to 80% and then implement it like God's own thunder, right? Because the plan is important. The implementation is even more so. So if you spend all your time trying to make this thing freaking perfect, you're going to find you've wasted part of your implementation plan. And that's just, you can't do it. We've got what we do is too important and what you do is too important. So I have a couple of pieces to share. I mean, okay, message with emotion, deconstruct your strategy, recruit, plan early, death by ducks, don't get caught behind the curve, meetings, avoid them if you can. But I have a couple of things that are available for you. There's a little link up at the top. Obviously, folks already have my PowerPoint, but you can click on that and it'll take you to a place in my website where you can download some of the case studies of stuff my company's done for non-credit programs. I'm just going to show you, I did a piece here, handout on one of the ways that I really think you lead the way, and basically how a lot of these programs are all feeding into the credit piece. I do have a couple of things in here. The unicorn, which is the magical people who've always wanted a college degree. They're sitting there near the spring of knowledge. And of course they do an inquiry application and then enter the dark pit of onboarding despair. So this is just something that might give you ideas about how to reach out to these folks. But I'm also going to share with you one more well, there's all my contact information. You are more than welcome to reach out. By the way, that's my email at the bottom. I will never tell you no and that you can't reach out to me on all of those pieces. But in the meantime, I'm going to show you something. And if it helps you, I'd be happy to, I will do it for you for free. This is our media preferences document. We do a national study of community college students. The survey, when we do it, you can translate it into any language, and it's the way people want to be communicated with, right? So here's contact methods and expectations. And down here under edit filters and demographics, you can go into the pattern. And what I've already done is I've identified whether they're there for credit or non-credit classes. So when you look at this stuff, I'm only talking about people entering non-credit, right? And hold on, let me log in again because I spent so long a time. This is our data drawn from community colleges. We're actually in the field doing our spring run this time. I would invite everybody listening to me, if you and your college, I don't care if your credit side wants to do it or not, if you want to do it with your folks, we will happily give you the link to do the survey. It can be done by people no matter what language, because at the top there's a translate button. Tell us what they trust. There's lots of qualitative data about literally things like where do you hang out and what do you listen to and who do you trust kinds of things. And here, if you can see it, right, are, you know, the contact methods. How much do you like or dislike these ways of being contacted with important college information? And you can see, you know, call, text. I realize I'm not zooming in. You can see those pieces, right? Social media. Well, the fun part is it's all live data, gang. You can say, I don't care if people hate it or strongly dislike it or slightly like it. You can now look and see how school email is a big deal for them. And there are literally 100 questions in here that are all useful that could help you doing marketing, like, you know, all of the different ways that you can reach out. So if you're interested in that, gang, reach out to me. I'll put you in touch with my researcher that runs my media preference program. And it's no cost. It's not, I won't try to sell you a darn thing. What I really want you to have is things that make your life easier and that allow you to do what you do even better. So there you have it. That's my long and the short of it. And all of my contact information is available in the PowerPoint. And I'll stop share. We left some time for questions, so I'm here.